The Ride Home Rants podcast is brought to you by Reaper Apparel Company. Reaper Apparel offers a casual line of superb fit, finish, and comfort. We design for those who refuse to die slowly and choose to live untamed. For those who aren't afraid to face the dark, for the ones that thrive in it, and for those who can appreciate life through a grim lens. That's Reaper Apparel Company. Go to the link in the description of this episode, use the promo code Mike Bono, and get 10% off. Also, the Ride Home Rants podcast is brought to you by Tactical Brotherhood, all American-made apparel, which helps support the Second Amendment. You can also find all this in the description of this episode with the link Tactical Brotherhood. Part of every proceed does go to helping veterans. It is a very good cause. All American-made products made right here in Minnesota. Go and check them out. Use the promo code PATRIOT15 to get 15% off your purchase. The Ride Home Rants podcast wants to thank you for listening and let everybody know that we do offer monthly subscriptions to help support the show in other ways other than listening and downloading each episode. What you will get with each subscription is you will get bonus episodes that aren't released to everybody. You will also have a chance to ask me anything each and every month where I will put out a special episode just to answer your questions. You will also get more exclusive content that is not released to everybody. To subscribe to the show, go and click on the link in the description of this episode, and I look forward to your added support and to help us keep this show going. The Ride Home Rants podcast is also brought to you by Buddy's Beard Care. Buddy's Beard Care provides premium men's grooming products at an affordable price. Products are made in Ohio, and Buddy's Beard Care supports local. The majority of our supplies are from other Ohio-based companies. You can find them on social media at Buddy's Beard Care or online at buddysbeardcare.com. Use the promo code BONO15 and he will save you 15%. I've been using these products for a little over 6 months now, and my beard has never felt healthier. It has never grown faster, and according to my wife, it has never felt softer. Also, the Ride Home Rants podcast is brought to you by former guest of the show in Matt Landowski in Sweet Hands Sports. Elevate your game with Sweet Hands Sports. Our sports gloves are designed for champions, providing ultimate grip and durability. Achieve greatness with every match. Choose Sweet Hands Sports for the winning edge. Grip your victory at sweethandsports.com. Use the promo code BONO10 and he will save you 10%. He has sent me a complimentary pair of golf gloves. They are so comfortable, durable, and breathable. You won't find a better pair of gloves out there. Again, sweethandsports.com, promo code BONO10. Lastly, the Ride Home Rants podcast is brought to you by Deemed Fit, a clothing company from first responders for first responders. These products are so comfortable. They look great. They have great messages on them. They are provided to support first responders, especially those who worked through COVID. All of the proceeds are going to helping veterans and first responders with their mental and physical health. This is a great cause. I support anything that has to do with our first responders and our veterans. Again, deemedfit.co, promo code Mike Bono will save you 20%. Now, let's start the show.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Ride Home Rants podcast. This is your special guest, Fitty, on the ones and twos tonight, as we bring you the All Things Cleveland Browns episode, our first roundtable where we talk about nothing but one team. And since we have the Browns, who are entering the offseason here with a new coach, quarterback position up in the air, maybe a new stadium here in a couple years, as we all think, what a better way to bring you a show but talking about the Cleveland Browns. First and foremost, before we jump into the show about the Browns, make sure you peep all of our sponsors in the pre-roll and the post-roll, as they're small business owners and they are great supporters of the show. Make sure you also peep all of our guests today on all of their episodes that they are on, whether they were roundtables or individual shows. And make sure you check out all of our first 6 seasons here of Ride Home Rants with all of our guests, over 300 guests now and 300 shows. So without further ado, we're going to dive into all things Cleveland Browns show with three fantastic guests talking about all things Cleveland Browns. So, guys, when you introduce yourself, we need your name, what month were you born, and then for the older people, they'll know what this means from a nursery rhyme. But what would you rather be in your career? A butcher, a baker, or a candlestick maker? And let's start with Mr. Cleveland himself, West Side Bill. Take it away.
As Fitty said, Bill's the name, out of West Side of Cleveland. Was born in November, end of November, so Sagittarius for those of you who follow that. And then, oh man, you always got the fun and crazy questions to start us off here. We'll say Baker. Maybe can get creative with that, bake some different things, and have some fun.
Okay. The man, the myth, the legend, straight out of YSU. It once said he beat Pete the Penguin in a race. Once also that he dressed up as Pete the Penguin to meet Pete the Penguin. Chris.
You guys, Christopher Marsco. Was born in December 8th. Let's see. I don't have to say butcher. I'm a red meat kind of guy. I want to be able to make my own cuts, butcher.
Okay. And again, he was Pete the Penguin, and he was so cool. He met Pete the Penguin himself later on. Try to figure that one out. And then last but not least, the man, the myth, the legend coming to us from Case Western Reserve University, 25 years strong, 22 as the head football coach. Greg.
Yeah, my name's Greg Debelak. I was born in April and 100% a baker. I go to a bread place at least twice a week. I'm kind of addicted to fresh bread.
Okay. All right. You know what? I think for me, I would pick a butcher, I think, even though you're in cold weather, constantly, because, right, you need to be cold around the meat. I can't bake, and I feel like being a candlestick maker has to be an art form. So I just don't think I would want to do, the candlestick maker, and I don't want to be a bad baker because I can't make bad bread for Coach. So, and my birthday is in August. So we're not here to talk about birthdays, but we could do a show on nursery rhymes. It could be pretty cool. But guys, we're going to talk about the All Things Cleveland Browns show here. So we're going to dive right into this. So, and I'm going to let you think about this because I'll answer it first. But who is your Mount Rushmore of Browns players? Meaning, who are your top 4 Browns players of all time? And I'm really curious to hear from you guys about this. But I'll go first to let you guys think. I'm going to say, of course, Mr. Browns himself, Jim Brown. Then I'm going to go with Otto Graham, Lou the Toe Groza. For 21 straight years, the Toe was with the Browns. And fun history note, the Toe signed 21 one-year contracts to be with the Browns. And then I'm going to pick Joe Thomas, more recent memory for people. But Greg, what would you say? Who are your Mount Rushmore players from the Browns?
Well, I would say Brian Sipe. That is my all-time favorite out of some great quarterbacks with the Browns. Ozzie Newsome, huge Ozzie Newsome fan. Greg Pruitt. I think he's incredibly underrated for the versatility that he brought as a punt returner, kick returner, and running back. Gosh, and I have let me pick and Myles Garrett. I mean, he is just for sure Hall of Famer. Just freak athlete. A guy that is a game changer. That any coach would want him on their squad.
Okay, all right. Stoy, how about you on this? What are you going to say?
Yeah, this is a really good one. I think, you think of the Browns recently, a lot of not so good teams, but definitely a storied history and a ton of really good players. But I think starting with Jim Brown, like you said, Fitty, I think darn good place to start. I'll go with Bernie Kosar, number 2. I think, just as I was growing up, hearing my parents talk about the drive, the fumble, and a lot of that stuff, I feel like went back to Kosar and their glory years there. And then I'll throw in Joe Thomas. Pretty much all of my growing up was Joe Thomas on the line and a lot of bad teams, but just how consistent he was kind of, brought my fandom in there. And then Myles Garrett to round it out. I think just how dominant he's been, and definitely a big part of my, recent years watching the Browns. So we'll go with those 4.
Okay. Chris, what are you saying about this?
So I'm gonna go with my personal route, Mount Rushmore, because you could get into. I think you hammered it with your four. I mean, you can get into the Joe DeLamalores and Max Speedies, and there's a lot of Hall of Famers you could get to. But I'd say my four. I'm going to start with Clay Matthews. I wore 57 when I played football, and I was somebody that saw a lot of highlights of growing up, being a young football fan. Hanford Dixon, original dog. I feel like the history with what's going with the franchise, still using the dog pound moniker and whatnot, and having a big hand in that. Joe Thomas setting a record being an Iron Man. And then Bernie Kosar being a Youngstown Warren guy, him going to Boardman. That was always talked about quite a bit in the house moving forward whenever he was in town, having the chance to go see Bernie. I remember meeting him as a kid. So Bernie Kosar rounded out for me.
Okay. I think it just depends, like, I think on where people grew up, right? With what era, because some people have seen the great eras of the, 50s, 60s. Some people saw really the 80s, right? With Marty. And some people didn't see it till, the 90s when they came back to the 2000s, which really weren't that great. They had some good players in there. I think there's an argument for all those guys. Guys, one of the next questions I want to get into is about the possible moving of the stadium, which looks like it's going to go, to Brook Park. And what are your thoughts about this stadium moving out of downtown? And I'll kind of start here on this. And this is been a big topic. I'm sure Greg would agree, working in the higher ed space as well. You get a lot of people giving a lot of takes on this from like a financial and standpoint and things like that. But, I like this move because this isn't about the Cleveland Browns. This is about the Haslams. This is about Cuyahoga County. This is about what can be drawn to this stadium, right? My thinking is, and this is just my opinion, if your stadium for the Cleveland Browns hosts, say, 8 to 9 football games a year, okay, and you maybe get one concert and a SummerSlam there, okay, you're telling me that those 8 games and 2 events are going to make or break the city financially when you have a very good Guardians team making the playoffs, you have a very good Cavs team making the playoffs, you have other corporate 100 and 500 companies down there and headquarters there. If we're talking about a football team bankrupting a city from a lawsuit and then the loss of revenue, I think we have some more major issues. Because the thing is, this stadium potentially is going to bring a Super Bowl here. It's going to bring a national championship game here, a Final Four here, potentially the high school state football championships, concerts that you just can't bring in right now, like Beyonce and the real big Kenny Chesney's, Taylor Swift, even though I wouldn't see her if she was sitting across the table from me here, but you're talking, there's hundreds and hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars that are going to be dumped, I think, back into the city and the county, off of this. So I think Cuyahoga County and the city of Cleveland will still be fine. I just have major concerns if they're really thinking that this is going to, really bottom out the city, that 8 football games. We just have some more issues than, what do we think here? So, Greg, you're a lifelong, Cleveland guy. You've been around, you've met a lot of people, and you probably know it's a little bit better firsthand with seeing them coming and going, the Browns originally. What are your thoughts, though, on this stadium potentially moving to Brook Park?
I don't know much about the financials other than it's going to hurt some businesses downtown. I get that really thrive on those 8 Sundays a year, the restaurants and bars. That's going to be hurting some people. But I think there's a lot of positives about moving it out of the downtown area. I look at what the Buffalo Bills do. That is definitely a suburb of Buffalo, and that hasn't taken anything away from those people and their feelings about it being a Buffalo team. So, whether it's politics or just the Haslams getting a better deal, I like the move. I think it will be easier to get there. It's a chance to start anew and kind of establish a new culture. And it's I hate to say this, but it's got to be better than what's been going on there for the last 20, 25 years.
Yeah, and I do think, some small businesses may get hurt for sure, but I think the money that will go back in the infrastructure of Cuyahoga County and the city itself, I think, it'll be huge. And to your point about the Bills, right? They're in the suburbs. The 49ers are in Santa Clara. The Jets don't even play in New York with the Giants. They're in New Jersey. So there is a lot of teams that don't play in the actual city itself. But Mr. Cleveland here, what are you saying, West Side Bill, about this?
Yeah, I'm really in lockstep with Greg on this one. I think, you have your tradition of, everyone, growing up, going downtown, going to the game, maybe seeing some games in snow. But it's absolutely done outside the city in many other, teams, many other cities. And I think it is a chance at really a new era for the Browns. It's supposed to be a beautiful stadium. Seeing the renderings, looks like it's going to be great. Obviously, we'll take some time, I think, to get it all built up, get the restaurants out there. But I think a lot of the same restaurant owners that are downtown, if it's not working, hopefully there's an opportunity for them to, put something over in the new Brook Park development and, create a living over that way. So it's a movement, and maybe some restaurants, if it is those 8, 10, 12 Sundays or days a year that impact them, hopefully they're able to find a new location and obviously get that done over there. But I think the stadium is beautiful. I'm okay with it being indoors. I'm okay with it being outside the city. And I think it's really a changing of the leaf and kind of a good thing for the Browns. And hopefully we can get some wins and some Super Bowls that we can play in over there as well. So I'm happy for it. I think it's a change, and we'll have to get used to new traditions, but I think it's for the better.
Okay. Now, Chris, what are you saying about this? You're on mute, Chris.
Sorry. Probably live the furthest from Cleveland out of anyone in this pod tonight, but isn't Brook Park like across the street from Cleveland proper? Like it's right there.
Yeah, like Brook Park really is. It's right there, and it's basically right by the airport where the stadium.
All right, so here's where I'm struggling. I understand there might be a little hit with the businesses downtown not having that surplus of people charging that you'd expect, but with the stadium already not being downtown near those businesses, and like Stoy pointed out, it's going to take a while for this Brook Park / Foxborough Dreamland away from the city park that they want to build, almost like a Wrigleyville. I still think that there's going to be a ton of people that go downtown. So I'm not even, I guess maybe I'm naive to it, but I feel like there's still, with the hotels and just the need of where people are going to have to stay, even if there is a Super Bowl. We're not going to be able to have enough hotels all right there. There's going to be a ton of people that stay in the city. So I guess maybe I'm skeptical with the stadium already being on the lake and not being in the city. But, I was also a season ticket holder for 11 years, from the time I got out of high school till just last year. And, there is something special about playing football outside, but at the same time, being selfish at this point in my life, the NFL is not exactly the purest version of the game anyway. So I think if you want that nostalgia, there's Friday nights that you could attend and maybe get that feeling a little better. I think the events you could attract, the fan experience that the Browns can create with this kind of environment, being indoors and the only one in the division like that. I think it's not right to resist change. I feel like you resist change, and I don't know, you just get grumpy as you get older. I feel like this is progressive of them, and it's all about the entertainment dollar at that level. So good.
Yeah,
news.
and I completely 110% like agree with that too, right? Because this is also about, like what I said, this is about other things coming to there, right? Like if we're outside, right, you can't have concerts, you can't have winter activities going on. Like this is more than just playing football outside. This is going to be, I think, an entertainment experience. So going off of that, guys, I want to go into this next one. So the Browns do get rid of Stefanski. I think a lot of people have seen that coming. They went through a pretty lengthy interview process that I think was surprising to a lot of people, and they settled on Todd Monken as their new head coach, a former OC across many, many years here. So were you guys like, did you like this? Were you surprised with this? Do you think he's going to do well? I know Jim Schwartz, people were really keen on him, maybe his second act from being with the Lions. Sean McDermott was out there. I don't even think they reached out. You did have McCarthy before he went to the Steelers. You had a few guys out there that maybe could have been potentially, better options. But Greg, let's start with you. Do you like this hire, or do you think this is outside the box? Did you expect someone else? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's inside the box for sure. I mean, it's a proven veteran. He has head coaching experience in college. He seems organized. As a head coach, it's all about alignment, is keeping all of your coaches on the same page, is being on the same page as your general manager and ownership. So he's been around, and he's a proven offensive mind. And I don't think anybody could dispute he's done good things at the places he's been at, including the University of Georgia, where he had a lot of talent, but he knew how to use it. So, yeah, I mean, it wasn't a sexy hire. It wasn't a hire that the media, I think, would get excited about. But I think he's a solid football guy, and he seems to have good leadership skills. So,
okay. Bill, what are your thoughts on this hire?
Yeah, I mean, he definitely was not on my top choices. I don't think I saw him on really anyone in the media's, top 2 or 3 hot hires coming into the year or coming into the coaching search, and kind of came out of the radar, I think, even towards the end. So I was a little bit surprised. I think they were looking at some younger coaches, and that combined with Schwartz. I was happy they did not go with Schwartz at head coach. Not that I don't think he would have been successful. I just think we needed a bigger overall culture change. And I think if Schwartz just kind of maybe slides in a spot, Stefanski out and him in, maybe not as much changes. So I did want to see a new guy at the helm, someone from outside of the team. And since hiring, I've watched some of the press conferences, and I like him. I like what he's saying, and I think he brings a little bit of hard-nosed football, and seem excited about being here. So I'm excited about him. We'll see where it goes. We've had plenty of head coaches, and he wouldn't be the first one that didn't work out if it happens that way. But yeah, I'm a big fan, and I'll be rooting for him.
Okay. Chris, what are you thinking about this hire?
So I always think with a hire with coaches, because I always laugh, we get hired to get fired. And, you think about the time that the franchise is in the influx of offense. Typically, when you go from a calm head coach that, maybe isn't very vocal to a guy that, a little more of a butt kicker, he might choose somebody out in a press conference. So I like it from the stance of it is changing the culture in a big way. I also like that it is, I guess, outside of the box, or like Greg said, in the box. He's proven, but he just hasn't had an opportunity. So, I feel like in many ways, sometimes you get lucky. I don't feel like the process was very clean. I felt like as a fan the entire time watching it, that as smart as they are, they're making it more complicated than it had to be. And I felt like they were maybe more clueless at times, and I'm sure they actually were, 'cause what do I know? But I like the hire. I'm good to give him a chance. I think he brings a lot of things that maybe we were lacking, and he has a lot of good experience. So we got to give him a chance.
Okay. Now I'm really curious to hear your guys' take on this one. And truly, I want to know your opinion on this. Whose fault was the Baker Mayfield to Deshaun Watson debacle? Was it Stefanski's? Was it Sashi Brown? Was it the Haslams, or was it all of them? Because to what they did to Mayfield to get rid of him, to go do what he's done now in Tampa Bay, to get Watson with that whole disaster with the draft picks that made the Texans now be great, and be in the divisional round 3 years in a row, to just, the Buccaneers then ascending, and, just whose fault, was this? Because, we've all been fans, people have coached on here, played football on here. That looks probably as bad as anything imaginable. And Chris, I'm going to start with you on this. Like, whose fault was this overall?
Well, I have on good merit knowing close friends that are relatives of Alex Van Pelt that the beef with Stefanski and Baker was very real in behind the scenes. And I think that's very evident still with the comments that Baker just made towards Stefanski getting hired in Atlanta. So I feel like that probably got the ball rolling. There was not much backing by the head coach. It seems as though that Green Bay game on, I believe it was Christmas Day, almost fed him to the wolves, saying, all right, you want to be tough guy? Well, here you go. I believe there are like 5 or 6 interceptions. It was a terrible game he played, but that got the ball rolling. I feel like at the beginning of the year, and I believe when this whole thing hatched with Watson, they mentioned that they started doing their homework real heavy in October. So they knew before that season was even over that they're maybe going to make the switch. So I feel like it started with lack of confidence from the head coach who has to cook with the ingredients, for an analogy. And, that got the front office thinking of all kind of different ways to act smarter than everyone else. And that's how you get a debacle like that.
Okay. Bill, what's your opinion?
Yeah, I think the comments by Baker recently are pretty darn interesting. And I think as you see Stefanski out here, Andrew Berry's still in as the GM, that may be kind of telling as well. I think, I don't know if I would know for sure whose fault it was, but I think Stefanski probably is the one that takes the big portion of the blame, and definitely was, having a rift between Baker and I think, Jimmy Haslam probably has a little bit of skin in the game as well. And I think obviously probably signed off on the Deshaun Watson trade and bringing it in. So I don't think it's maybe any one individual, probably spread across amongst 4 or 5 of them. But I think Stefanski's definitely the biggest one, and he's certainly the scapegoat in the situation, losing the job and having Andrew Berry still there. So we'll go with Stefanski number 1, but probably all of them.
Okay. And Greg, what's your opinion on this?
Well, I guess the perception is Stefanski or Haslam. That's the perception, but without sitting in those meetings and knowing what people really feel, obviously there were people in the building that did not want Baker Mayfield around. What amazes me is why I thought Kirk Cousins was the fit, because he had been in Minnesota with Stefanski. Stefanski's preferred offense is run-oriented play action, which is right up Kirk Cousins' alley. And they were so successful with the 37-year-old Joe Flacco, or 39, however, he was old. So it didn't seem to be a good fit. It was destined to break apart eventually. And they took a big swing on Watson and they missed. So I guess long answer, but I guess the perception would be Stefanski and Haslam.
Sure. And I think, I don't know if a lot of people know this or not, and maybe we'll let Chris fact check me here like we did on the Hawaii football show, but I'm pretty sure like before they traded for Watson, it was something like all the years Watson started for the Texans, I think he only led them to 1 playoff appearance. I think he had like 2 4-12 seasons and maybe like a 5-11. And sure, he won awards and things like that, but he actually never like elevated the team to actually go and be successful. But Chris, you can fact check me on that and let me know. I thought that was something I read before. So now, guys, going into something a little bit different here, right? So last year for the draft, the 2025 draft, arguably the Browns had the best draft, if not the second best draft. Arguably the Giants and the Browns were 1 and 1A or 1 and 2, however you want to look at it. And the Browns had a lot of young guys, play for him this year and then have some success. So going off of that and building into this new era with the new coach, and new offense, potentially new defense here if Schwartz isn't back, what is the Browns' biggest needs, whether it's 2 or 3 things or even 4, here in the draft? Greg, let's start with you. What are the biggest needs in the draft this year?
Well, it's all on offense. I mean, I don't know if drafting a quarterback would be the smart thing, because I don't see a quarterback at their position in the draft that you could hang your hat on it for a career. Um, Offensive line is a must, and receiver is a must, whether that comes from drafting or free agent or both. Um, that's what has to happen. Um, you can get away with a average quarterback if you have the components around him to elevate him. Um, but boy, there's a lot to address on the offensive side of the ball.
Sure. I agree with you on that. I really do think their first, couple round picks really, I think, got to be the offensive line. I think you got to like solidify that offense line. You almost got to think back to that'd have been what, the 2006 draft with the New York Jets, right? You went to Brickashaw Ferguson at 4. You went, rest in peace, Nick Mangold, though, from Ohio State, I think at 29. And that you anchor a whole offensive line for 10 years then with two guys. I almost really think the Browns need to have like kind of that, truly that approach with this draft. But West Side Bill, what are you saying about this?
Yeah, I think the same thing. It's O line and wide receiver. I think, an argument could be made. We'll have 4, 5 new starters on the offensive line, maybe 3, but really, I think building that thing from the ground up. So we'll see what happens in free agency, but I think you'd really like to come out of the draft with probably two new young starters on the offensive line, fill in with a couple free agents and see if we maybe bring back Teller or Bertonio or someone like that. And then desperate need for a outside playmaker, number one wide receiver. I think a lot of teams would love one, but where we definitely need one. Got a couple serviceable guys, a wide receiver, but nobody that I think really scares the defense too much right now. So, we can find a wide receiver one and a couple of starters on the O line in the draft. I think you come out pretty happy.
Okay. And for people that don't know, Bill was a high school teammate of former NFL player Billy Price, played for Ohio State and in the NFL for a number of years. Bill was a lineman with Billy Price. So just a fun fact right there. All right, Chris, what's your take on this? Browns draft needs.
They've almost pigeonholed themselves with the way that the Watson deal fell and all of the offensive linemen that they're losing. They've struggled a wide receiver probably since I got rid of Jarvis Landry. I'd say that there's been a void of not only leadership, but also consistent production year after year. And then the offensive line, you're just going to be losing so many people. Conklin's at the point in his career where the injuries are really starting to mount up. Teller's going to be gone. Tonio's going to be retiring this year, if not next. There's just a lot of needs. Dewan's struggling to stay healthy early on in his career, unfortunately. So, yeah, they better address the offensive line and wide out through the draft, because with the restrictions they still have financially with the Watson contract, they don't really have any other options on how they want to build that. And, to Greg's point, it's really hard to put a quarterback, whether it's Sanders or anyone else in the draft or in the future, or however that falls. There's a void of protection and weapons, and you're a product of those around you. It's the ultimate team game. It's not basketball where one guy makes up 20% of the team. So
Sure.
they better get busy in their scouting there, because they have multiple picks that they need to use to address those areas.
Sure. So, guys, I'm really curious on this. Now, Greg would remember the old Browns and the new Browns. Bill would have been little when the Browns left. Chris would have been little with the Browns left. I remember a little bit of the original Browns. But in your opinion, and you really meant to think about this, is Kevin Stefanski a top 5 Browns coach of all time? You got to think about this, because there could be an argument one way or the other. But Greg, you've been in Cleveland a long time. You've seen a lot of Browns coaches. Is Stefanski a top 5 coach of all time?
Well, Paul Brown won. Okay. So I don't think anybody can dispute that. Marty Schottenheimer, another, I believe Marty's in the Hall of Fame.
Marty's not in the Hall of Fame.
He is not in the Hall of Fame. My goodness.
I know.
Boy, he should be. Because he did some great work in Kansas City, and Boy, I'm Butch Davis, taking that wreck of a franchise from when they just had all the cards stacked against them, uh, when they came back, and then shortly after he took over, taking the playoffs. That was an incredible job. Um, Bill Belichick, uh, you know, people forget he took over a 3-13 team, and his third year they're in the playoffs, and it fell apart when the move came out. So I think 5 at best. Um,
Okay.
no one else comes to mind, so let's put him at 5.
Okay. Now,
But
Chris,
I personally love Sam Rutigliano. Love Sam. Got to know him. He would visit our campus all the time.
okay.
Yeah, he stopped by practice a few times. One of the highlights of my career at Case was he came by. He had a mutual friend on our staff, and he came by with an overhead projector and was drawing up offensive plays and talking about, well, this is what we did with Ozzie, and we put Brian Brennan here. It was awesome.
So, if nobody didn't check out Greg's show, definitely check it out. He talked about on that when he coached Cam Brown, Mike Brown's son, the coach of the Knicks, and Mike Brown did a presentation to the football team. So Greg has all types of great stories. It's always great to talk with Greg about the great stories. But before Chris and Bill answer this, this is hard, right? Because when we're looking at topics, and then you really start looking at Brown's coaches. Sure, you take away Paul Brown, Marty, 4 years, 2 AFC championship games, 3 playoff appearances, multiple playoff victories that he had there. You could bring in potentially Sam into that equation, maybe Butch Davis. You could make the argument for Belichick, maybe, and then you really got to think like, man, this could be like Stefanski. Now, you can also make an argument for the guy, and I forget his name, but he's the one that replaced Paul Brown. And he won a championship.
Collier. He's on my list.
Yeah, he won a
Collier,
championship at 64 with them. So Stefanski it does have a compelling argument. I mean, 6 years, only 2 winning seasons, maybe one of your best coaches ever. Chris, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I started writing as soon as you said this. I want to make sure I got it all down. So I went Paul Brown, Blaine Collier, Marty Schottenheimer, Sam Rutigliano, and then I had a 3-way tie for 5th place with Butch, Kevin, and Bill Belichick because I feel like their accomplishments and time spent in the franchise. Coach Belichick's unfortunately short with the move, but their accomplishments and tenure length were similar to each other. And I feel like the 4 I mentioned before that were all very entrenched with their era and their accomplishments during that time. So yeah, I'd say pretty clear to me, but I mean, you could debate, like you said, 5th at best for Stefanski. I feel like it's all preference from there. I feel like those 2 Coach of the Year awards are also part of the wow, he took the Browns to the playoffs. Like that's so hard. That's like extra. Like he must be doing a heck of a job. So, not that to undermine his accomplishments, but I also feel like that's a storyline award, and I don't think it hurts that the Browns having a consistent lack of success prior to him being there and him going to the playoffs relatively early doesn't hurt his case for that award. So,
sure. Okay. Bill, what are you saying about this?
Yeah, I think, 2-time coach of the year. I'll put him in the 5 slot. I think he is a good coach. I really do. I do think it was time to get rid of him here, but brought us to the playoffs, got a playoff win. Unfortunately for the Browns, the difficulty of getting on this top 5 list is maybe one of the easiest in the NFL. So by default, but I'll say, yeah, I think we'll put him in the 5 slot. I think he did a lot of good things. And like I said, I do think he's a good ball coach. And if he gets in the right system with a good quarterback, and I know he's down in Atlanta, got some talent down there, I wouldn't be surprised to see them have a successful offense. So I think he's a good ball coach, did a lot of good things for us. New era our way, but we'll slide him in at 5, and hopefully we can replace him with our new head coach here before too long.
It's just crazy, right? When you think about it, like, even he did win a playoff game, but only 2 winning seasons out of 6, and he can make people's top 5, ever. It's kind of crazy. It's like right there with the Jets, how bad their coaches have been outside of like Weeb Eubanks and Bill Parcells. Then you have like Rex Ryan and maybe Herman Edwards. So, although probably a little bit better of a list than the Browns. So, guys, I want to dive into this one. And Greg, you've been a football coach a long, long time. You've coached a lot of quarterbacks. I'm really curious to hear this. In your opinion, is Dillon Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders a long-term answer at quarterback for the Browns? How long can these guys hang on, even being pro football players?
Yeah, so it's interesting because obviously Shedeur has shown flashes. He has some moxie. He can make some plays, but what NFL coaches want is to not turn the ball over. And to me, what I've seen from him, boy, he is going to turn the ball over. Not saying that he came from a system that was as far away from an NFL system as possible. And that was the pre-draft fall was when people started taking a look at his tape and not just his statistics. He just wasn't ready to come in. And I think the Browns handled the situation right. They would have thrown him to the wolves if he would have been the starter right from the beginning. So I see potential, but where is the ceiling? Is he still just going to be okay? So that's really hard because you're going to have to invest a lot of time into him. And then maybe 2 or 3 years down the road, you're going to say, yeah, he's just never going to get to that ceiling to get us to where we need to. That is a tough decision. And that's why those guys get paid so much money to make those decisions.
Sure. So what do you think about Dillon Gabriel?
I think he's a career backup, a guy that can come in and run your offense and not make mistakes and have the defense win games for you.
Sure.
I don't think he's a guy that you put the franchise on your back and carry you to a Super Bowl. I don't think that's any possibility. But hey, Brock Purdy, who saw that coming? What he's done, I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in football, and I just didn't see that coming out of college. So, yeah, but from what I've seen, I'm just giving you and I'm not analyzing Browns games. I'm trying to figure out how to beat Washington and Jefferson. But that's the thing, like, what's the ceiling? And if we got rid of Baker because we didn't think he could take us to the Super Bowl, boy, I don't know if these guys' ceilings are better than Baker Mayfield's.
Sure. Okay. Chris, you're a newly appointed head football coach, right? Going to have to kind of see both sides of the ball now from being a defensive guy, but as a fan of the Browns and as a coach, what are Sanders and Gabriel's ceilings here in the NFL? Can they make it? Are they going to be career backups? How long are these guys going to be in the NFL for?
I'll start with Dillon Gabriel, and I hate being this guy because I'm very much in his side of the coin on this. But when you're playing in the NFL in the land of giants and you're 5'9", 5'10" at best, I don't know how many guys have panned out like that. I mean, I think the only true success story consistently during his career was maybe Fran Tarkenton. That was way before my time. But I don't know if there's been anyone that short since then with any measure of success to that level. So I don't know if there's even a career backup role for him. I feel like Colt McCoy, I don't know, showed more where you could at least, have him make a play here or there. I feel like Dillon Gabriel, and it's early in their career too. I feel like both of them, you don't exactly know what they are till you're 2 or 3. But, there's a stature of limitations with him. Like he could only, his ceiling's very apparent to me. Now, when I think of Shedeur Sanders, I also think, yes, they were right not feeding him to the wolves, but I feel like that a very flawed plan. We gave all these reps to Kenny Pickett. And, we drafted both of these guys, and our answer was Kenny Pickett, really. I mean, again, far be it from me. Heck, I got my own problems. I just got my first staff assembled, so far be it from me to tell them how to do this. But I just don't really know how much they invested in him from even giving him reps to have an opportunity for success. I feel like, coming in with the lack of experience in an NFL scheme, like Greg pointed out, they didn't exactly do anything to help him with that learning curve. So I'm interested to see how that goes this year because I don't believe that they're going to make a very high investment in the draft on a quarterback. So I'm anxious to see because I think they're both going to get ample reps this offseason. But there's at least some tools with Shedeur that you could say, okay, wow, yeah, they're having some flashes here. He's shown some moments of success. I really don't know how that's ever going to happen with Gabriel.
Okay. Bill, what's your opinion on this?
Yeah, I think largely the same. I think when you think of Dillon Gabriel, it watch a lot of games with him, not throwing the ball too much further than 5 yards, 10 yards down the field. A lot of checkdowns, didn't seem like the confidence was there, and didn't really see the flashes that I think you saw with Shedeur. So, wasn't always sunshine and rainbows with Shedeur either, but I think, as Greg said, he brings a moxie that I think a lot of Cleveland really wants to attach to. And I think we'll get the opportunity, and I want to get the opportunity to see him play this year. Hopefully we can put together a good offensive line and some weapons around him and really find out. From there, I mean, obviously if you don't have a good year, he doesn't look too well, then could look into the draft again next year. But I really think the trajectory ahead is fix some of the offense and give this guy an opportunity because I think he really is what Cleveland would like to be as a quarterback. Has a big name and a lot of moxie to him. So I think Cleveland really would like to see him, succeed and attach to him. So I'm excited to see him this year, and I think we'll find out a lot. And hopefully he does well and can be the quarterback of the future. But definitely got to build around him and find out what he's really made of once you have an offense built around him.
Sure. And I would say with these two guys, I do think long term, I would say Gabriel's out of the NFL probably in 5 years. I would say he's probably ceiling's no greater than what Bryce Petty was with the Jets. Just a career third string guy, probably get out, maybe go GA somewhere, get in the coaching type of deal. Sanders, I think he'll be a spot starter type of guy. I think you got to, people must realize too, there's money still with Watson, right? And if they're going to pay Watson whatever, $50 million again, they're not going to, I don't think Haslam's going to eat $50 million and make Watson his third string quarterback and lose all that again. I think the reps will go to Watson. They will give it to Watson. And then, because sadly, probably Watson gives them the best chance to win 6, 7, maybe 8 games with his ability, or they blow the whole thing up and they maybe trade for Tua or Kyler Murray. So I think that's kind of what it's going to be. I don't think Sanders gets a second contract with the Browns. I think they're on 4 years or 3-year contracts even right now with being the late round draft picks. So we'll see. But guys, want to get into this. What is your prediction for the Browns record next season? Westside Bill, you shook your head at me when I said that about Sanders, so I want to hear your opinion. What's the Browns record next year?
I was shaking my head. I don't think we're seeing Deshaun back on the field for the Browns. I certainly don't hope we see him anytime soon. So we'll go. Let's be optimistic. Why not? Right? We're on a everything Cleveland Browns show. So give me a surprise of the year. Defense leads us to a 10-7 year. We seek in the back of the wild card and see what we can do there.
Okay. Chris, how about you on this?
I don't know. I guess I'm too young to say they've broken me down, but I even find it hard to be that optimistic. I see probably 6-11 at best. Maybe if we could go 7-10. I mean, I feel like that would still be market improvement over where they were last year, but I don't know. It's a hard division. Even with the amount of experienced coaches leaving, there's still Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Steelers culture and way of doing things, that they pull you down, make you play in the mud, their style. And I just think they have a long road to hoe in terms of who they have to play twice every year. I think 6-7 wins would be improvement. So I'm going to be modest. I feel like that would keep everyone happy, say at least the arrow's pointing in the right direction, and go from there.
Okay. Greg, how about you on this?
Yeah, I'm going to go 8-9. Again, there's improvement there. I can't see how the offense doesn't get better. There's no place to go but up. And they do have one of the premier defenses in the NFL. So let's go 8-9 and get that trajectory going upwards, and hoping to pay off in a few years.
Okay, I'm going to go 7-10. I think they do have a chance to win some games. And Chris, to your point, you brought this up. Although I do think because Harbaugh left after so long, Minter, it'll take some time to implement what he wants to do, because people are going to be like, well, we always did it this way, right? McCarthy's going to come in there, unproven quarterback with the Steelers. I think McCarthy's a great coach, but, starting over, after 19 years or 18 years, whatever those guys, 2 guys were there with, right? Zach Taylor might be on the hot seat, might be a little bit on the hot seat. Burrow may want out. Hey, who knows? Maybe Joe Burrow goes to the Browns, keeps it in state, right? But I do think they'll have a chance to get, I think, 4 wins in the division itself. You can sneak another 3. 7-10 could be a good way to go. All right, guys, we're going to round out the show with this question. And we're going to start with you, Chris. Who is your favorite Browns player of all time? Your favorite personal Browns player?
I'm still going to say Clay Matthews. Still a little bit before my time, but pick my number off of him. The way he played, the longevity he had, both played linebacker. I just always wanted to emulate the way he played the game and tried to be like him when I played. So Clay Matthews.
Okay. Bill, how about you?
We're going to go Joe Thomas. Growing up, offensive lineman, that was kind of the, seeing Joe Thomas at 73 jerseys in the stands and stuff kind of made it be a little bit cool to be an offensive lineman, where a lot of times it wasn't. So that was kind of the idol growing up, and watched him through most of my kind of playing career. So we'll say Joe.
Bill, I mean, you were right next to, Billy Price too. So, I mean, you had, Joe Thomas, you were watching him, and you were watching the guy right next to you go on to the NFL. So yeah, a lot of good guys around you with that. And Greg, I know you mentioned this earlier, but who's your favorite Browns player of all time?
Yeah, Brian Sipe, cardiac kids, there's a guy, Brian Sipe, I believe, was 5'11". He did not get drafted. He never should have been an NFL quarterback. He was MVP of the NFL in 1980. Just remarkable. And Chris, Clay Matthews is probably the freakiest athlete you can make an argument to ever play in the NFL. He started at linebacker. I think he was 42 years old with the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, just how does that happen at linebacker? Just absolutely crazy, and just a crime that he is not in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
He's got the iconic flow. I mean, it's not like the Pat Tillman flow, but I mean, he had that crazy guy look to him. He looked like a ball player,
He was a California dude.
Yep.
You know what? And with all the controversy around the Hall of Fame, with Belichick and Kraft right now, let's make sure we don't forget about, Clay Matthews, and let's not forget about Marty Schottenheimer, one of the greatest coaches ever, took multiple teams to the playoffs, multiple years winning 10 plus games with multiple franchises. So let's not forget about Marty out there for all the people who remember Marty Schottenheimer, the dad of Brian Schottenheimer. And for people that don't know, Marty Schottenheimer went to the same high school different times, though, but as same school as Marvin Lewis, Fort Cherry, Pennsylvania. So Fort Cherry, Pennsylvania produced Marvin Lewis and Marty Schottenheimer. So Marty was a great coach. Shout out to Mike Worrell, who's been on here, big supporter of Marty. Wants him definitely in the Hall of Fame. Although sadly, Marty has a 5-13 playoff record, which I think is detrimental to his Hall of Fame prowess. But that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Ride Home Rants podcast, as we talked about all things Cleveland Browns and covered a lot of topics. It was a lot of fun hanging out with Greg and Chris and Bill, and thank you guys for being on the show, talking all things Cleveland Browns. As we go into the offseason here, see if some of our predictions hold true, especially about the draft and what the Browns do at the quarterback position. As always, if you like the show, be a friend and tell a friend. And if you didn't like it, tell them anyways. They might like it just because you did it. This is Fitty signing off, and we will see you next week.
The Ride Home Rants podcast is brought to you by W Energy. Energy drinks made for gamers, streamers, and podcasters alike. For gamers, streamers, and podcasters alike. Go to the link in the description where you can find the best energy drinks out there. Less caffeine than a cup of coffee. Also, no jitters and no crash afterwards. Use the promo code Mike Bono and get yourself 10% off. Also, the Ride Home Rants podcast is brought to you by my favorite sponsor of the show, and that is Shankit Golf. Golf apparel made for the everyday golfer. We might not go out and shoot a 6 under par. We're probably going to shoot a 6 over par, but this is going to give us the gear that's going to help us rocket on and off of the course. Go to the link in the bio, use the promo code Mike Bono, and get yourself 10% off there as well.